Now, I think let's go back across to James and see if everything is going well on his side.
Everyone, it is going well on our side. Well, it's relatively well. Of course, it's Sunday morning in the bush. Of course, it's going well. So that, everybody, is where Hippopotamus has come along and made his territorial marking. He's pushed his bottom up against this tree. He's started to produce the dung, and then he's flapped his tail from side to side. It's like a sort of little paddle, and he sprayed his dung all the way over here. And of course, this gave rise to the legend of why it is that the hippo does this. And apparently, it was in order to show the Lord that he wasn't eating fish. That's why he's allowed to stay in the water, you see. You can see that indeed he doesn't eat fish at all. He eats only grass. There's a big river called the Timbavati River that runs through it, and it only runs when in years of very severe rain. But in years of very, very severe rain, yes, you can find the odd crocodile in it, but that's normally a crocodile that's been washed down from somewhere, from a dam perhaps that's on the river, and it gets washed over the dam wall and sent downriver. So that does happen from time to time, but crocodiles will move into these areas temporarily, and that's why you never get into any water that you do not, that you don't have sight on sort of 24 hours a day. So they will just arrive quite suddenly and take up residence for a few days and eat whatever happens to get into the water. So crocodiles you've always got to be careful of. Now we'll do a little trip through the Marmati drainage, and then I think we'll go back to those lines and see if we don't have better luck with our signal than Taylor had. I suspect, however, the fact that we are only operating on one mast is going to make that difficult. This will be a good test now. Now, we did get a little bit of rain last night, 3 drops, Viam, I think it was, or maybe 4. 8. Ooh, Viam says 8 drops. There was a great crashing of thunder and a flashing of lightning and a howling of wind, and 8 drops of water fell out of the sky. It was pathetic. Anyway, that's how it goes out here. And while I was gone, there was a hailstorm, and ex-Ranger, you're wondering if the tent was damaged. It was, actually. Some of the poles were bent, but it survived very well, and nothing inside it was broken, most importantly, so no, it's actually fine. It seems to be entirely okay at this stage. I haven't checked it this morning, but the wind we had was not quite as severe as it has been, and it wasn't very prolonged. Come on, Karula, where are you? There's not even a track, you know. Anyway, we might be lucky. Also hoping for the Diederik's cuckoo. Sandra, you're in California and you're wondering about rhino and whether we have rhino here. We do, Sandra. South Africa is actually I think has the highest population of white rhino anywhere in the world, and that's on account of very successful conservation practices here. And we don't show them, though, on this show, mainly in sort of deference to their plight. It's highly unlikely that a poacher could be watching the show and would be able to get some kind of location of a rhino from watching the show, but just in case that could be the case, we just don't show them. So if we do see them, we just drive past them. Sometimes they get caught on camera, and we'll just acknowledge that and move on. But they are around. And Lisa, you're wondering if I've ever managed to catch a poacher. No, I haven't caught a poacher, Lisa. I've been around during 1 or 2 poaching raids when we've tried to catch poachers. There are are sometimes poachers onto these reserves. Yes, certainly rhino have been poached in this area, but the security now is so tight that it is almost impossible for a poacher to get onto this reserve and then escape without being found. That said, the vast majority of poaching incidents that happen in a place like the Sabi Sand are caused by poverty and people trying to snare things for the pot. So they'll try and catch a water bucket or impala or something like that just to feed the family. And that does happen from time to time in these areas. There's a wonderful story of a chap called, what was his name? I want to say it was Shivambalana, but it wasn't. It was something quite similar, actually. In fact, it may well have been Shivambalana. Anyway, Shivambalana, we'll call him Shivambalana for the sake of it, was a poacher, a notorious poacher of the Sabi Sand. And he used to take everything. Well, I don't know if he took any rhino, but he used to take things like buffalo regularly. He'd catch them, normally with a snare, sometimes with a spear. He'd spear warthog and that sort of thing. But he was a phenomenal tracker and phenomenal hunter, if you like. And for years and years he evaded being caught. Everyone knew who he was and what he was doing, but you know, he was very clever at not being caught, especially not red-handed. And then one day we knew exactly who he was. A friend of mine said, you know what, it's counterproductive trying to catch this chap and sort of discipline him and send him to the police. Why don't we try and employ him? And so that's what they did. And it took a little while to get, because every time they arrived at his house he'd run away. But they knew where his house was. And what they did was they eventually employed him to track. And he became a tracking teacher because he was such a brilliant tracker. And he's now, and I think he has been, fully employed at one of the lodges around here for the last, I don't know, must be 10 years now, as a highly successful tracker who has turned his ways to conservation. And what a wonderful story that is about using traditional skills of tracking and turning a poacher around and turning him much more in favor of conservation rather than going through the kind of a punishment of a trial or a sort of an arrest. Far more effective if you can do it that way. And he's now making a huge contribution to the land that he, well, I hesitate to say pillage because it's not like he could have been doing anything else. But certainly the landscape that he used to ravage is now under his protection. And still, I failed to find anything large at all. Hello, Paul. You say, why don't we hear about buffalo poaching if it's just for the meat? Well, Paul, a buffalo is one of the most difficult animals to kill out here, of course. If you are going to hunt, if you're going to hunt for meat, you're usually so poor that you're using a snare, and to catch a buffalo in a snare is no mean feat. I have seen it happen every so often, but you know, we don't hear a huge amount about poaching at all in this particular area, and that's simply because, well, we don't hear about every incident, and also because the security in the Sabi Sand is very, very strong. Further up north in the Kruger Park, I've absolutely seen snared animals before, and I've taken down many snares myself. But you don't hear about it because it doesn't happen very often, and it's normally something small like an impala or a bushbuck or a nyala that gets caught. Right, Taylor has one of those buffaloes, no wire around its leg. Let's go and see it.
No, this is a very healthy looking buffalo that we've got. He's actually looking in lovely condition. Just his hips showing just a little bit, but not very much. The rest of his body seems to be nice and plump. And of course, like the buffalo should, making use of every bit of grass that has come through at the moment. So head is on the ground, doesn't even really care that we're here. I don't even think he's really looked at us just yet. But he's a lovely bull. And it seems as though there's one more in the distance. It's just the two Duggar boys here. Now, speaking about poaching of buffalo, something that I experienced quite a bit of in is that the locals actually would come in and kill quite a few buffalo to take back for bush meat. So that was something that they did quite a bit. Unfortunately, in those sort of poorer areas, they don't have the anti-poaching systems that we sort of have in place in this area. So, for instance, let me just give you an example. In Zambia, there's no fences. So you have these big wilderness areas, and then just on the outside you have game management areas where you'll have a couple sort of more lodges, but not in the official national parks. And then on the outside of the game management areas, which we called GMAs for short, then you get all the villages. So it was very, very easy, and we'd often come across people just walking in the middle of nowhere. And you knew that they were out indeed looking for some meat to perhaps take back. When they were walking, though, they would just catch things like impala and various antelope, but occasionally they'd somehow sneak in with vehicles, and they would then take large animals such as buffalo. It's sort of one of their favorite things to take. Now, we've been seeing some interesting behavior with the buffalo over the last couple of weeks. They seem to be on we have to walk around the buffalo on eggshells. Remember, I had my incident when one came charging out towards me. And I know that it was one that didn't quite like Byron a couple of days ago while he was in the vehicle, which is not very nice. But these guys seem to be very relaxed with us now. And I presume that that's just because it's almost like overnight, the grass has grown a couple of inches. It's looking good again. And they're able to sort of not feel so hungry anymore and not have to feed on leaves. They're actually able to graze again. I think that's always the hardest for the animals, is after the rain. I'm pretty sure that they know that the grass will come eventually. But it's sort of those couple of days that it takes to wait before it gets long enough that they're able to eat it. Because it was just yesterday, well, not yesterday, the day before yesterday, that we were seeing the buffalo eating leaves and sort of not eating any grass. There we go, but you can see them making use of it. Oh, but let's go up ahead, as we've got Mr. and Mrs. Magpie Shrike's nest. We're on Hyena Road now, so that's just up and around the corner. Let's see if they're home and how those little chicks are doing. Right, let's see. I can see the nest. Is there anything on top of it? I think I can see hey, here we go, just in time. Just in time. Darby, I don't want to stop too close. You can see one of the birds jumping on the nest now. Here we go. Here we go. There's the little bird heads. There they are. 1, 2, 3. I think I saw 3 little heads pop up. Oh, this is wonderful. The last time we came around here, nobody was home. You can still see one little head bobbing up and down there, just in the middle of your screen, in the middle of the nest. Now, this looks like it's the male, a magpie shrike. Now, there's very few ways you can tell the difference between the two. It's really just that the white wing paneling that you see on the sides of their wings there. And, well, we'll see it again. The males have very, very white... Oh, there's all sorts of birds jumping around. The males have very white wing panels, whereas the females tend to be a little bit more of a creamish color. I'm going to go around and we're going to wait, and we'll see if they come back again. Maybe, I know from this other side we do get a little bit of a better view, so we're just going to try and line up nicely, and then we shall hopefully wait for the family to come back home. David, how's that gap through there? Oh, let's see. Yes, I think that is a nice gap. If they do poke their heads up, I think we'll have a better view of them. But we'll just sit here patiently with them. Remember, it's now, the female's not really sitting on them too much. She'll incubate them, or try and keep them nice and warm occasionally, but it's not freezing today and it's not awfully hot, so she doesn't need to shade them either. So both her and the male will be out now foraging and trying to find something for these little ones to eat. And I can actually see one of them that's just dived down into the grass, just to do that gap. You see there's like a little yellow leaf in the branches that the elephants have chewed. She's just flown up into the tree. No, he's just flown up into the tree. And this is a great time for these magpie shrikes is that they're going to be able to find lots and lots of insects now with all the rain that we've had. There's plenty of butterflies flying around, grasshoppers, which we've seen Steph finding when he does his bushwalks. And of course, well, there's no shortage of flies. So it shouldn't be too difficult for them to continuously keep bringing them food. Now, I'm wondering how old these chicks are. I very quickly want to check when I made a little pin mark on one of my maps as to where the nest was, and I just want to see exactly what date I did it on. Let's see. I did it. Oh, it doesn't give me. Oh, no, it does. So we found this nest originally on the 20th of October. So it's actually not that long ago. It feels like it was ages ago, only 10 days ago exactly. And we only discovered it about 3 or 4 days ago that, of course, these little chicks had hatched. So they're not too old now. They should start to get their little feathers coming through, developing. We can see every now and then a little bit of movement in that nest, if you're looking very carefully, the beak of one of them. And it's nice to see that all three are still alive. That's how many I counted. I'm not sure if anybody managed to get a screenshot, perhaps. Maybe as soon as the adults come back to the nest, perhaps you can try and take a screenshot for me, just so we can see if there were actually 3 little heads popping up. And that'll be quite nice. Hopefully all of them will survive. Like I said, there is definitely no shortage of food for these birds at the moment. So now it's just a matter of how good or how well are they able to actually catch all the little insects. But they're hard at work. I keep seeing just flashes of them occasionally, the adults flying in the distance and in and amongst the trees. They must be trying to flush something out. Now, I know that Clay was wondering this morning what is the difference between a magpie shrike and, of course, a magpie that you see in the US. Now, I've never seen a magpie for myself. I've seen a couple of pictures. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I want to try and pull up a picture very quickly of a magpie, but unfortunately I won't have one in any of my books. They're just Southern African books. But what I've done is I've opened up a picture. Now, this is an Australian magpie. We want a magpie from the US, right? Let's type that in so we get the right bird. No, we don't want maps. We want images, just so we can have a look here. Right, let's see if we can have a nice look. So have a look there. I've just pulled up my phone. So this is a magpie that you see in the States. Well, this is what Google shows me, of course. And I'm just also having a little look. They don't look very much like any of the shrikes that we get. And the first thing I want to point out is if you see the bill, can you see the beak? It doesn't have that recurved sharp point that our shrikes are notorious for having. So I wonder what the difference is. What does this magpie eat? Because it doesn't look like it's very much carnivorous. So we see these shrikes eating a variety of things, mainly insects, but of course they're well capable in taking down lizards and of course little mice as well. And then you'll need that sharp beak, of course, to tear into the flesh. So that's the first thing I don't see. I'm going to have another look. And it doesn't really look very much like a shrike either. Its entire body looks a little bigger. It looks like a combination between, flies, between a starling and something else of which I'm not sure. So I can't really tell you too much about it, unfortunately, Clay. I apologize about that. I don't know too much at all, but maybe you could help me out and you could tell me what do they feed on. Firstly, that would be quite interesting. And of course, what type of, is it a magpie? Is it in its own family, or is it closely related to something else? But I'd like to hear from you. You can please either hashtag Safari Live on Twitter, or you can alternatively, of course, send us a email, questions@WildEarth.tv. But let's go back across to James, who has got the lions.
Now, I would love to tell you that I tracked these things, of course, to great personal risk to myself, but you'd all know, of course, that I'd be lying horribly. These lions are exactly where Taylor left them. They've eaten something, and I'm told it was 2 waterbucks last night. I don't know where they are, actually. I have no idea where the waterbuck are at this stage, and I don't think anyone's seen them, other than the original report which came from Aubrey. So that's the story here. Now, they've clearly eaten a huge amount, and this is very obviously a number of obvious things here. Hang on, let me just turn the game drive radio down. That is definitely Tinyo, the lion, the male lion. You can see that, oh gosh, he just turned, when he looked at us vaguely, you could see that he had that obvious tooth. Then the second thing is that lion, the little cub lying underneath the arch of that guarri bush, on its belly you can certainly see mange. Now, let me just look with my binoculars. Yeah, that is mange. And you can see it on the back of the elbows, which are where the front leg joins the trunk. Now that still, to my mind, is the only cub. No, there's a bit more. There's a bit more on the one to the right-hand side. It's a cub with a bit of mange there. That's it. But I think you're going to find that these chaps are going to survive this. Yes, they've got it. And there's another cub. In fact, the cub in front here has her ear is also covered in it. That's it, the one that's just sat up. So we do have a bit of a mange issue here with the Nkuhumas. We're going to watch it with interest. I think you'll find that they're going to be okay, on account of the fact that they are eating so very much. Just quickly going to call Mike on the Game Drive channel. Mike, just come straight down Twin Dams Road. You will see the tracks going off to the south, at least towards the drainage line to the east, between Wahlberg's Eagle's Nest and the Gallagher and the Djuma Dam. So I know this could, I mean, look, it could be quite distressing to watch, especially if the disease does progress. But I think they've had it for some time now, and I don't think it's made a huge difference to their lives. And some of them are definitely clear of it completely. I don't know if you can hear, just off to the left-hand side of where we're sitting, some very, very angry birds. Some drongos and some starlings and some rollers, and I wonder, I think that there's probably a snake up there, you know. I don't think they're alarm calling at these lions. In fact, one of the lionesses just got up to look. There she is there. She's just behind this beautiful tambuti tree. She's just got up to look. And I wonder what she isn't just checking to see what it is they're shouting at. Because, of course, this is one of the ways that animals talk to each other. It's through alarm calls. And despite the fact, it's vultures. It's vultures descending. It's vultures going over the top and going down. And I wonder if that's not maybe where they killed last night. All the lions are up and looking now. There you can see very clearly that's Tinyo, which means tooth, of the Birmingham coalition. He's easy to identify, as is the one with the hole in his face, Mfumo. Yeah, there are vultures descending in great numbers now. Look at them all coming from above there. And the lions, being the great scavengers that they are, will be watching very closely where the vultures are going. And I think we'll go and have a look too, and we'll just get Kirsty to tell Taylor that the vultures are going down somewhere, it looks like, on Quarantine. Perhaps the western fringes of Quarantine. Jeepers, look at them all going. Now, if these lions had not eaten something last night, I suspect that they would have got up and started running that way. Look at that fat lump there. He doesn't know whether he should yawn or pant. And they'll move around continuously every so often during the course of the day. They'll reaffirm their social bonds, especially after they've had a night of fighting over a kill. Ooh, hang on a second. Another male coming from behind us. It's Nkuhuma and Amber Eyes. That's them there. And now this male, Tino, seemingly seeking out a consort amongst these lionesses. One of them doesn't have babies either. We'll keep an eye on Amber Eyes and the other one. There's much growling, and it is a blood-curdling sound, everyone. And apparently the same thing was happening with Taylor earlier on. I don't want to move at the moment. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cubs. Just counted the cubs. So Tino is now up and looking. Now there can sometimes be a little bit of fighting over mating rights, but you know it doesn't happen all the time. Sometimes the males just kind of accept that one is going to mate and the other one isn't. I know I can't move. They've blocked our only exit from here. And Nkuhuma is scraping his back legs against the ground, just sort of kind of marking his territory. VM is doing pirouettes. Amber Eyes, as per usual, seems to have absolutely no interest in mating whatsoever. Sorry everyone, I can't actually move there, so that's why you've got a fairly poor view. Anyway, there we are. Everyone is over there now. And Tino has moved to the back of the group. That's very interesting, I must say. I don't really know why there would be... I suppose it's probably just some kind of competition over mating rights. That's very interesting, Gail. A very fascinating question, actually, from Florida. You say, will the male be patient and just wait for the female to be ready to mate, or will he use force as well? He cannot use force. If she doesn't wish to mate with him, she just moves, and it is impossible for him to do anything about it. In fact, that is the case with just about all animals out here, bar perhaps the primates, of course, who have gripping hands, and they're able to then kind of manhandle, if you like, each other. It doesn't happen like that with any of the other animals, because the female has to want to mate. If the male wants to mate with her, she's got to be willing. She can just move away. Yes, the refusal to mate, I suppose, can result in some kind of conflict where he might get a little bit aggressive, but you see, he can't actually hold her down. So and she's also, you know, a lioness is pretty intimidating when she's angry, and so I don't think it happens. I think you'll find that unless the female is fully prepared to mate, no, the male is unable to have his way, as it were. And that's why these males are just lie around, infinitely patient, waiting. Now, these chaps ate a very, very large meal, and just before we left them last night, we were wondering if they'd try and kill last night. Well, indeed they did. and we're led to believe it was 2 waterbuck. And of course, when we talk about predators, the greatest predator out here is the human predator, and the human predators caused a great deal of trouble and strife for the rhino of the area. And Rick, you're wondering if the lions do the same sort of thing. No, they don't. You know, rhino are too big. Rhino are simply too big for lions to worry about. So no, they don't go for rhino out here. Yes, there's the odd occasion where a lion might, I suppose, in desperation try and take a young rhino, and if a rhino was orphaned, certainly it could easily be killed by lions. But no, you'll find that by and large, lions leave the rhino, especially in this area, completely alone. You know, bull rhinos, 2.5 tons, that's 6,000 pounds. I mean, that's a massive, massive animal. And these chaps, less than 1/10 of that size. Hello Shannon, you're in Ohio, and you're just sort of following on the topic of the lions and the rhino. You say if the rhino was to die of natural causes and being eaten by lions, would we show it? Yes, I think we would show it, absolutely. I think that would it would be silly not to. We're not trying to hide anything here. All we're trying to do is to, you know, if there's the slightest chance that a poacher might see where a rhino is, well, we don't want to be involved in anything like that. But if the rhino is dead already, then there would be absolutely no harm in us showing it, I don't believe. Good question there. Oh, the lion's very tired today after their fat meal. I think we'll sit here for a little bit longer, and then we'll head across and see if we can't find what those vultures were descending towards. And like I say, you know, if these chaps hadn't eaten, you'd find that they would have headed off and tried to follow where those vultures were going. Gregory, a very good question. You say you obviously saw watching those, or you were watching those vultures fly from a huge distance away, and you say, how did they spot the kill? Well, Gregory, it's no more complicated than them having very, very good eyes. They're able to spot things from a huge distance away, and those vultures would have seen something dead on the ground from a long way away. The bush isn't too thick yet, and that's because we haven't had much growth, much rain yet, and so the vultures can see things from a huge distance away. And then what they do is one will find a carcass, and the others tend to follow that one. So one will find it, and then others that are closer by will follow it, and then those that are even further away will come and follow the vultures as well. And they all go down, and then they'll have a feed. And that's why the lions and leopards and all the other predators are very, very aware of where it is that vultures are when they fly over. I mean, I'm trying to put a positive spin on this mange thing, but I am worried about these lions, I must say. I would hate to see them all succumb to mange, but it is a natural, completely natural disease. And so we must just watch and see what happens and learn. There's the big fellow up. Every time he moves, there's a growl from behind us. They are quite nervous of each other, obviously. And there's always a balance, you know, it's quite interesting. There's a balance between the violence that they're prepared to, the violence they're prepared to act on, and the need to try and maintain social cohesion within the coalition and within the pride. Now, Clay, you're wondering about if they're ever dangerous to us. You know, with cubs like this, you always want to be a little bit careful, especially if you're tracking them on foot. And yes, they can give you a bit of a rev and get up and charge you. And if you're not used to lions, well, you might turn around and run away, and that could easily result in there being danger, because that is what a lion's prey does. If you stand still, generally you're okay. So you don't want to threaten lions with cubs, you don't want to threaten any lion, but a lion with cubs especially, you don't want to threaten. Then they can become dangerous. But right now, no, they're pretty relaxed, bar the two males who are clearly quite irritated with each other for whatever reason that is. And normally, of course, as with men, they're fighting over girls. But what I think you'll find here is that the rest are completely relaxed. A lovely breeze blowing through here now. Red-chested cuckoo in the background, the sun coming out. Oh, it's gorgeous. Very nice to have animals to film, really, Vim, isn't it? Rather than just my waffling face. Vim is now being completely silent because he's agreeing. Oh, now maybe is that the female that's in estrus? This could result in a bit of conflict here. Yep. And there's now a deep throaty growl from behind us, which of course is slightly terrifying. Swagger breathing. It looks like he's sort of breathing with a swagger, as if to say, well, look how amazing I am. And she's got her ears pinned back, her face turned away, thinking, you're a stinky, stinky creature and I want nothing to do with you. Duck Rat Dave, we were chatting about mange a little bit earlier, and you're wondering if the mange does progress any further in these lions. Are we going to show them less? No, I don't believe we will at all. The reason we showed the sticks less, Duck Rat, what is it? Duck Rat Dave, is it? Is simply because they are not always in our traversing area. They've spent a lot of time on Chitwa and Little Gowrie and Mala Mala, which are areas we can't traverse. And so, yes, while we did see them looking mangy and pretty foul, we didn't have a huge amount of time with them. These cubs, we would certainly show. I mean, whatever happens, nothing will be hidden from you, and if we are able to show them their triumphs and tragedies with the mange, we'll absolutely do that. It is going to be interesting to see, because it's a little bit like, well, you know how, I don't know how many of you have watched that film or that amazing series Game of Thrones, or perhaps read the books, but there's a disease they describe in it called grey scale, where it's a kind of insidious movement of, it starts as a skin disease and eventually it kills the victim. And this mange is a little bit like that, where it starts in a little patch, and it takes a very long time to progress, but it does seem kind of inexorable, almost like there's nothing you can do about it. And it'll be interesting to see what happens here. That's certainly what happened with the sticks. It just got worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And of course all these lions are lying in extremely close proximity all the time. And that's why I think they're going to be okay. Because I think that far more of them would have caught it by now if they were going to. Anyway, time will tell. Now, today, or this year, has been possibly one of the absolutely worst mosquito years I've experienced in my years in the Lowveld. And Fredes, you're wondering if the lions managed to escape the mosquitoes. They do to a certain extent, but they do get bitten. And many animals out here get bitten. Remember that human beings haven't really lived out here for a very long time in great numbers, which meant that the mosquitoes would almost certainly have had to drink the blood of other mammals other than human beings only. So yes, they can certainly get it at lions, and they can almost certainly get it all at the antelope if they want to. And so I'm pretty sure that they don't get protected from mosquitoes, but much like us in this area, through our natural kind of resilience to them. I've never seen so many mosquitoes as I have this year. And I know Taylor was talking about flies and the number of flies there are. Well, of course, mosquitoes are from the same order. And I wonder if it isn't just a year of the fly. Certainly it is a little bit worrying out here, given that there is sometimes malaria, but we've had very little rain, so we might be okay. Alrighty, let's just go and find out what Taylor's doing. I'm going to sit here for a little bit longer while there's a little bit of action with the cubs, and then we'll go and check out what was happening with those vultures.
On our way sort of towards quarantine, we managed to stumble across this giraffe that was just lurking in the background, standing very still. I think he was hoping that he wasn't going to be seen today, because he seems to be walking further and further away into the bushes. Come on, giraffe, show yourself. If he doesn't come out into the open and he does go further away, then we're not too far now. We're just approaching the Djuma dam, and then we'll go and have a little look on quarantine, because I can see quite a few vultures in the distance, and they seem to be quite flying quite low, so I definitely think that needs some investigation. We'll have to drive around and do a lap. Okay, it doesn't look like he's going to come out. Let's not waste too much time here. Mr. Giraffe, you better have your A game for this afternoon. Sometime he has to have a bit of a talking to. Oh, I've just lost my mic patch and pulls my hair. You can live on my lap for now. Okay, well, we'll have a quick look at the dam as well, and have a look and see if there's anybody else around, and then we will not be too far away from quarantine. Now, I wonder what's happening around there, because we haven't really been seeing too much vulture activity down this end of the world. It seemed to have been that all the vultures at one point were living between Drakensberg Road and Mumba Road with those two buffalo carcasses that we saw a couple of days ago. We're just going through a little dip now. Now, it's unusual that the vultures are flying so low. And typically we see them at this time of the day trying to catch thermals, and there were a few that were trying to find a gap in all the clouds and catch one of those thermals and ride up to a couple of 1,000 feet into the sky. But then, like I said, I saw a couple of others that were flying sort of just over the tops of the trees. So we need to go and have a little investigation, I think. So we're making our way around. Perhaps on our way past we'll say hello to the crested barbet and see if the crested barbets are home. We've got to visit all our nests, and something that I would also like to see, and I need to remember to tell Steph exactly where it was that hornbill nest, that red-billed hornbill nest. We saw the two, the male and female, we saw them sort of starting to plug it up. That's something we need to try and go back to visit, but I think it would be easier to actually have a look when you're on foot, so you can get around to the other side of the tree and see what's happening. Right, we're not far now. I may even see James as we go past. We're over a little bump. Right, here's the marula tree in which the crested barbet nest is in. You see that little hole in the distance? I'm just going to duck here so you can have a look. Now, so that branch that goes to the left, here we go, go in, go a little bit to the left. There it is, there's the hole there. Now, it doesn't look like anybody's home just yet, but you can see how windy it is, all those marula leaves flapping in the wind. Now, I'm also not even sure when this, I remember finding it a few weeks ago, so I wonder if these chicks also couldn't be getting to the point now where they're going to fledge soon, because it's been quite some time. We've seen only a couple of times an adult going in or out. But I don't hear even any of the crested barbets in the area. Perhaps they're not home. Perhaps this is not even active anymore. Well, we'll keep checking on it. Let's go to quarantine, which is just over the dam wall, and go and see what is going on. Something smelled very much like leopard urine. You can get that whiff of popcorn out in the bush, but I haven't seen any footprints just yet. And another animal that also urinates and sort of has that very battered popcorn smell is jennets. Jennets also do that, so it's just the two, leopards and jennets. I was under the impression for quite a long time that it was just leopard, and then I actually watched a jennet sort of urinate. And well, then I drove past it and it smelled very much like leopard dung and leopard urine, and of course there were no leopard footprints, and we watched it do it. So that is how I figured out that jennets have that smell to them too. Right, going through here. Okay, I'm not too far away from quarantine now, but let's go back across to James and see if there's still tension with Nkuhumas.
The tension's been broken by the disappearance of the entire pride. They've moved down through the drainage, and we're just trying to see if they're going to cross over. I wonder if they're not heading back to where the carcass is. I think have they crossed out there, Fiam?
Some of them have crossed. Looks like it's crossed.
That's very interesting. Okay, let's see if we can't get into the drainage, but I think we might have to go all the way around. That over there. There's much stick in this area. Hold on, everybody. Watch the back of your heads. I think we're actually going to have to make our way out of here. Now, these two, there's one cub left of these two with this consorting pair, which I think is quite strange. Yeah, they've definitely gone out, haven't they? Yeah. I'm sure they would have gone back towards the kill site. I can't see why else they would have moved. So let's go and see if we can't find the kill. Now you might lose pictures as we go through here, everyone. We will have to flap the aerial down. How's that, Wimpy? Alright, I think while we do this, let's head across to Taylor, see if she's had any luck with those vultures, and we'll see if we can find the lions.
So I've seen a couple of vultures going down, but I said to you this morning I wanted to show you all the lion tracks. Can you see that? I think if we maybe zoom out a little bit, we'll see all of them. Now, it was so funny as we were coming across here very early this morning, as we just saw all the different sizes of different lion tracks, and it was so beautiful. You can see on both sides of those tracks over there. But the wind is slowly starting to blow the dust in and across, making them look nice and all. Now, I just want to turn this game drive radio off again, but just seen some vultures land down just up ahead, almost like where we do the fireside chats. Let's see what is going on up here. I'm just going to go up onto this middle road, try and get another sight of them. They were somewhere along here. Just saw them landing. Now, I wonder if something hasn't died up here. There we go, I can see them all. Let's have a quick look at them. They're all over there. Look at all those vultures. Now, I can't see what they're eating, but they have definitely landed, and they're feeding on something you can see on the right. But it looks as though, maybe this is the waterbuck kill. that everyone was talking about this morning, that apparently the lions had killed. It does actually look very much like a waterbuck. And that would make sense. Like I said, I didn't think that a waterbuck would be very much of a big meal for all of those lions. So perhaps they just devoured it, and then of course in just a couple of hours, and then left it, and that's what the vultures are feeding on. Let's see if we can get a better view. I'm going to go up and around the corner. So this makes sense. This is obviously where the lions killed last night. Like I said, I couldn't see any footprints at all. Not footprints, my goodness, my brain is not working today. I couldn't see any carcass while I was down in that drainage, and we did quite a bit of navigating around here. This is a much better view. There's quite a few vultures here. Now, we're quite far away from them, but it only seems to be the white-backed vultures that are here. You can see some of them are even sitting down having a rest, and of course still squabbling about the carcass. There's another one making his move, going in there. Yeah, you can see not anything left on this carcass at all, just a few scraps. And there's what looks like it could be the face of the animal. It does look very much, like I said, waterbuck-like. It looks like there's grey hair. And typically there's lots of waterbuck that hang around on quarantine, from beautiful big males to, of course, females and their little ones as well. You can see all the flies hanging around too. Now this is when carcasses are devoured quite quickly, is when a lion or a leopard or a hyena or something has started scavenging on it or feeding on it first and torn it right open. Then the carcass really doesn't stand a chance. You can see all the vultures look very much well fed. You're probably wondering, how did we miss this carcass on quarantine? But quarantine it's not flat. It's sort of got a slight gradient to it, and where these vultures are all sitting, you don't see it until you come and drive right up onto the top on the middle road. Well, that's why we missed it, and I don't think those vultures were coming down when we started drive. I think they've only just started coming in when James pointed it out. And I thought, well, we better race over there and have a look. We did hear the lions calling, well, I heard them quite a few times last night. But I didn't hear anybody giving a distress call, so I presume that this waterbuck must have died quite quickly then. But I can't tell you yet if it's a male or female waterbuck with all those vultures surrounding it. Oh, there's lots of them here though. And it's not often that we get to see vultures sort of sitting down the way they are on the left. See how they've got their sort of wings open and they're sitting down on their chest? I suppose this is almost how they would sit if they were sitting on a nest. Isn't that lovely? I don't think you don't often see that. It looks as though a couple of them have got quite a bit more sort of white feathers on them than the others. Perhaps these are juveniles. It does take them a number of years before they get their adult plumage. So I think these lighter coloured birds, and I'm not talking about the white patch on the middle of their back, because that's where the vultures get their name from, the white-backed vultures. But if you sort of see on their wings, they're sort of more of a mottled, a tawny colour, almost like the paled morph Wahlberg's eagles. That's sort of the colour that they have to them. So I think that some of these are still juveniles. And a couple of them have still got all the white feathers on the backs of their heads as well, like the one on the left, which is normally an indication of a juvenile too. As they get older, they lose that sort of white fluff and it becomes dark brown. But very little feathers on their neck. I love that adaptation that they have to the other birds, that they're able to utilize their neck and stick it right into the carcass. And then, of course, they're not covered in blood. All the others are having a bit of a squabble now. Not fighting over it like we saw them fighting over the buffalo carcass the other day. I think that they've unfortunately eaten most of it. Right, let's very quickly go across to James, who's got drinking lions.
Well, they're certainly thinking about drinking, everybody. We've come across the other side, and this is one of those natural pans that forms when the rain starts to come. Lots of clay here. Well, here comes the male and the female. They're talking to each other. Ooh. Ooh. Look at her very slinkily there, draping her tail over his neck, just to keep him interested. She's still not ready to mate. Let's see if they come down and have a bit of a drink here. It's a very picturesque little spot, as VM says. Postcard picturesque. You know, Douglas in Arizona, you've made a very good observation, and you say, is it possible that the Birminghams are breaking into two coalitions, given that we only kind of see these ones with the Nkuhumas? Douglas, look, I think it would be premature to say they're breaking into two coalitions, but what is not uncommon is for a large coalition like this to semi-split, and one half take care of one side of the sort of territory and the other half take care of the other side. So yes, that is not unusual, and it does happen quite a lot, and it certainly happened with the Majingalan coalition, who were the dominant force in this area for a very long time and still are on the western Sabi Sand. But when trouble arises, if a coalition wants to stay in charge, then they need to sort of rally. And certainly that's what the Majingalan lions do. When there's trouble, they roar, they all come together, and they look after what happens together. Now that could well be the case here, or they could go the way that the Matimbas went. There were 4 Matimbas originally, and of those 4 Matimbas, 2 of them stayed here, 2 went north, and they just never kind of joined up again. And so when the Birmingham boys came into this area, of course, those Matimbas had absolutely no way of defending themselves against 5 lions. But yes, we certainly could see we could be seeing the beginnings of that sort of stratification, if you like, of their roles in the territory. There's much growling and much tension on account of the male's attentions here. I'm sure he's the one that's created all of the conflict that there is. Well, we have 8 cubs here, and Christine, you say it seems optimistic to think that all of them will make it to adulthood. And is this a typical pride size? Well, the pride size is not atypical for this area. 5 lionesses is pretty standard issue for the Kruger region. 8 cubs making it to adulthood, I think it's highly unlikely that they'll all make it to adulthood. I'm not sure how long they'll all last. Only probably 1 in 10 males makes it to adulthood. There's a big dog fight going on. There's a battalier chasing what looks to be a Wahlberg's eagle. Look at this. Well spotted, VM. Oh, they've turned over. The battalier was put to flight there by the pale form Wahlbergs. I'll just keep watching them. Oh, they've turned away from us, I'm afraid. Anyway, that's quite interesting. Where was I? Yes, so only 1 in 10 of the males will probably make it to the stage that these Birmingham chaps are. The females probably a lot greater success, probably 5 in 10 or so. So I would say, yeah, 50% of these females probably won't make it to adulthood, but an additional 4 females Or how many females are there? There are 5 of them here. Let's say 3 of them will make it. So an additional 3 to this pride will make a big difference to its numbers. There's also something quite special. Isn't that lovely? That, everybody, if I'm not mistaken, is a wood sandpiper. Let me just quickly look it up. I haven't seen one since last year, or since last season, so I'm a little bit, what should we say, rusty. Byron says I'm correct. That means Byron is in the final control. Well, that's very nice. Byron is doing extra work. The wood sandpiper, it is indeed, everybody. We don't often get views like that of the wood sandpiper. I might have to take a rank average photograph of him. Isn't that exciting? Don't you think the world will be a better place for my picture of the wood sandpiper?
Maybe.
Liam is unconvinced. He says maybe.
Never did that impact study on it. So.
I still can't actually find the wood sandpiper with my camera lens. Okay, while I try and find this wood sandpiper with my camera, let's head across and find out how the vultures are doing with Taylor and their waterbuck carcass.
And the story of the Nkuhumas and what they ate last night, we're slowly starting to figure it out. Now, it looks as though they must have killed an adult waterbuck and her calf. We can see some ribs over here. I think this is the calf. It doesn't look particularly large. And then there's a carcass in the distance where most of the vultures are around. And that looks like the ribs are much larger there. So I suspect that must have been the mother of the little calf as well. So they had a good feed, those lions. I mean, a waterbuck is quite large, probably about 250, maybe 300 kilograms. They're quite big. Now, very, very briefly, as well as we repositioned, we come around onto one of the other roads. We had a glimpse of a lappet-faced vulture. Now, if you're wondering what a lappet-faced vulture is, I suppose I can show you a photo. I managed to snap one very quickly before it flew away. And I don't know why lappet-faced vultures seem to be so shy. They never seem to stick around unless you give them lots of room. Let's zoom in. Much more robust than, of course, the white-backed vultures, and much larger. So this beautiful lappet-faced vulture that only stuck around for a couple of moments can weigh almost 6.5 kilograms and has an outstanding wingspan. Oh, sorry, my camera decided to turn off, but I think you got the picture. Sorry about that. I'm sure Kirsty was in flat panic thinking that she'd lost signal with that. But don't worry. And of course they've got a massive wingspan. It almost reaches 3 meters long. But let's have a little look again at these. Oh, they've started to peck at the carcass closest to us once again. Now, of course, the white-backed vultures, I'm afraid, are not as impressive and as large as the lappet-faced vultures, but at least we get to see them in big numbers. It's only occasionally you see 1 or 2 lappet-faced vultures around a carcass. It's not usually more than that. And these beautiful birds are not much smaller. They've got a wingspan of about 2.2 meters, so it's quite large. But then they're much lighter. They only weigh about 5 kilograms or so. So not as heavy. And I wish you could see, though, how the wings of a lappet-faced vulture dwarfs the white-backed. Now, speaking about their size, and I was also chatting about watching these birds and the way that they were sitting, and I was comparing it to how they would possibly sit on a nest. And I know that David from Napa would like to know, how large are a vulture's nests? Well, because of the side of the bird, they need to be quite big. They normally build them on the tops of trees, and then with lots and lots of sticks and branches. They can be massive, probably about 1 meter. Say somewhere around there. I mean, a lappet-faced vulture stands at just over 1 meter tall, so they'd have to be massive nests, and ones that they'd constantly reuse, very much like the fish eagles and sort of what we see with the eagles in general, how they reuse nests and just rebuild them every year. So it'll be massive. Sort of, if you can stick your arms as wide as they can go, I would say about that long, roughly by about that wide. They make platform nests. That's the proper term to describe a vulture's nest, and most of the eagle's nests. So typically either in the fork of a tree if it's got a wide enough trunk, otherwise on the tops of the trees on some sturdy branches. And I reckon once they've finished eating whatever's left on this carcass, I don't think there's very much. I think the lions did a very good job at picking the waterbuck clean, as it's not really a big meal for all those lions. As I reckon they probably sit here for a little bit, maybe perch themselves up in a couple of marulas, let food digest before they set off and catch their thermals. But I'm sure the vultures are very happy that they didn't even need to fly very high this morning. They were able to have breakfast. But it's really nice, and this is one of the things that I absolutely love about this time of the year, and when we do have the drier periods. As sad as what it is for the herbivores, and we know that they sort of are stressed the most, not having any food, not too much water around, but of course we get to see these amazing gatherings of these large birds, the vultures. You're seeing, hopefully you're going to start to see the hyenas coming through as well, but I think there's just so many carcasses around at the moment that the hyenas are sort of all out and about. And this is lovely. Now, a vulture that I'd like to see very briefly, and hopefully one decides to come around here, is a white-headed vulture. Looks quite similar to the lappet-faced, just slightly different, of course, with the white head. So like that fluffy white hair that we see on the hooded vultures, on the whiteback vultures, they have a similar thing. Now, Paul, you're wondering if anything eats a vulture. I can imagine if a vulture were to die, something like a jackal would scavenge it. We often see jackals being quite brave, or attempting to be brave and chasing the vultures. I've seen lions, I haven't seen it personally, but I've seen footage of lions taking down vultures before that have just got too close and then feeding on them. So that's an opportunity. Those were young lions, though. I think I've actually told that story before. So let's... Kirsty says she may have thought she had seen the lappet-faced vulture. Ah, Kirsty, you have got incredible ears. Not incredible ears, incredible eyes. Your ears aren't bad either, though. But there's the lappet-faced vulture hiding in the far back. My goodness. So it must have just got up and moved around, because we actually saw it fly away, but maybe it did a big loop and then sneakily landed. Well spotted. So there we go. Now let's see if this lappet-faced is going to take off, because that is quite spectacular. Look at it run. Look at that wing. Look at those wings, how massive they are. Huge. Are you going to land in the tree? That is beautiful. Almost 3 meters across from one wing to the other. And off it goes. See, I told you they're quite shy. It was happily sitting there unnoticed, and it's almost like it got the camera onto its... Look at all these... They're all taking off now. They must be sort of taking the cue. And now they're... Sorry, I believe that I'm disappearing every now and then. Is that better, Kirst? Wonderful. No, it's amazing. I'm not sure why they're leaving, because there's still food for them to scavenge on. But everybody's flying around now and leaving. Perhaps they got a bit nervous and not too sure as to why that vulture flew off. Oh my goodness. Well, the wind is really starting to howl now. I'm going to stick with these vultures for just a little longer, but let's go back across to James and see if the lions are not thirsty anymore.
The wind sure ain't howling here. It's completely sheltered where we are, and the cloud has been sort of dissipated by the blazing summer sun. Anyway, so we're sitting here in the sun. The lions are getting a little bit sort of sweaty and panty, and some of them have headed down into the drainage to the other side there, and I think that is where they're going to spend the majority of this day. Now, I'm very pleased to say that this is one of the only times, actually I've seen it, I've read about it many times of course, that the lions have put paid to any legend that they don't eat waterbuck because they don't taste nice. Well, they certainly killed 2 waterbuck last night, ate most of them, left the scraps for the vultures, and now they're lying in the shade here while the waterbuck, they're lying in waterbuck heaven, I suppose. They've moved, where are we? We're probably about 100 meters to the south, 300 feet to the south of where we first saw these lions. And I think they'll probably move between the shade and the water for the rest of the day. And we may be lucky enough to find them here again this afternoon. But again, I think very interesting that they left that carcass. Obviously, they'd eaten most of it, most of both of them. But they hadn't lain there. You know, like they do most of the time, they will lie around the carcass until it's done, and then they move and they leave it alone. And I think it's because, again, they've eaten so much, they just think, well, you know, we'll go and have a drink, lie in the shade, and if we want to eat again, we'll just kill something else. They've eaten so much in the last few months. Just getting up and having a bit of a stretch, moving into some cooler shade. And Vim and I were just saying, look, there's quite a lot of mange spotting on just about all the cubs. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. If this is an inexorable disease like the grey scale, or if they will recover from it. I think you're going to find they're fine. Find that they are fine. Joel in New York, I'm not really sure about the answer to this. We focused quite a lot today on disease, and you want to know about the Zika virus and whether it's possible that lions or other animals could get it. I don't know of its origins, Joel. I'm assuming that it probably came from animals originally, and I don't know if it necessarily affected them, because of course we do get viruses that will affect human beings, but their carriers, animal carriers, are not affected by them. And I'm not sure if the Zika virus is one of those. It's quite interesting, actually. It's transferred by mosquitoes, isn't it? So I don't know if that would affect lions. It certainly hasn't come to Africa yet. I don't think there have been any recorded cases here. Certainly the number of mosquitoes in this area at this time of the year would make it quite terrifying were it to be around. Now, a disease I do know about them getting, Sarah in Florida, you weren't worried about rabies and whether or not they can get rabies. Yes, they can. Absolutely. Can you imagine the terror of a male lion filled with rabies? It doesn't tend to make them much more aggressive, apparently, but they do foam at the mouth like a dog does. But yes, they can get rabies. Rabies is a constant threat out here, and we're very vigilant of it, and that of course is because of the proximity of the reserve to rural communities where there are absolutely no veterinary facilities, which means many of the dogs go through their lives without any kind of inoculation. And so if a rabies outbreak does occur, it's always possible that those dogs could bring that disease into the reserves, as happened with Sindile. And for those of you who don't know who Sindile is, he's now just over 2 years old, young male leopard, and he caught a rabid dog, which he dragged into a tree, and we managed to chase him away before he could eat it. But he was inoculated before he showed signs, and if you can do that, both with humans and actually with animals, then you can prevent the disease spreading. And he's now okay. But yes, it is a constant worry, and certainly as a human being, you don't want to have anything like, you don't want to go anywhere near rabies. I think there's one recorded human being surviving from rabies in America, and I think they kind of almost cryogenically froze her, and I'm not sure that her I don't think that she was ever kind of mentally okay after they did manage to get rid of the disease. It gets into your brain, and then you really are in quite a lot of trouble. Anyway, I think we're going to leave these chaps now. Let's head out. We've got a few minutes left, see if there are one or two more things to see. If we don't see anything, well, then I will see you probably either this afternoon or tomorrow morning. I'm not sure exactly. In the meantime, let's go for the last few minutes with Taylor and those vultures at quarantine. Thanks for coming along our drive. I'm very glad the end turned out slightly more action-packed than the beginning. See you later.
Have a look at all these vultures now. They're really the few that have decided to stay behind to finish up the last of the carcass. They're all getting into squabbles. Obviously, the adult waterbuck must be almost completely finished, because it seems as though they keep moving from the top and then down towards us again to pick at a couple of scraps. Now, we saw the lappet-faced vulture here, and the lappet-faced vultures was quite lucky. And sometimes they're not directly in competition for what the other vultures are feeding on. Because they're much larger, they're able to digest certain things better than the other vultures. For instance, like tendons and even the skin of the animals, which most of the vultures aren't able to do. You can see these vultures, they're pecking at the skin, but they're not eating it. They're trying to remove the bits of flesh that are still attached to the inside of the skin there. But this is just absolutely incredible. Nothing goes to waste. Even a couple of starlings coming in. Now Pinchy says that she's always amazed as to how something living can die so quickly and then of course be reduced to absolute nothing. It is quite amazing. Like I said, nothing is wasted out here. They've picked that carcass clean. And a moment ago, and we can see the starlings starting to move in, but with all the hair that's left over from the waterbuck, you can see that starling had something in its mouth. I suspect that a lot of these little birds, the starlings being included, coming through and to collect as much of that hair as they can, which they will use for nesting material. So not even the hair of an animal goes to waste, which I think is quite spectacular. Is that all right? Sorry, I believe that I'm having some gremlins attacking my mic pack. It has been such a wonderful morning. I don't know about anybody else, but I feel as though this drive has gone so quickly. One moment we were with the lions and Henry the hippo, and then the next moment we were looking at the magpie shrike nest and a buffalo, and then after that, well, we heard the vultures, and it feels as though like I could still go for a bit longer. Where on earth has the time flown by today? It's just been one of those days. I suppose we also haven't been baking in the heat for which has been a first for a few days, so that's quite pleasant too. Looks like a couple more vultures wanting to perhaps leave the graveyard that we have over here at the moment. And not making as much noise as you normally hear around a carcass. But like I said, I don't think there's very much left to hear too much squabbling. I really wish some of those starlings or little sparrows or whatever it may be would come around and collect some more of that hair. It was so interesting to see all the different birds utilizing the various materials. Which roller is that? Can you see it? Oh my goodness, I can hear a roller. Sorry, I got distracted. It's sat into that marula now. Now I'm not sure if it was perhaps a broad-billed roller. It looked very dark, but it's now sitting out of sight, but we'll keep an eye out for it. Perhaps it decides to come through. Maybe we'll catch it, but I don't think we will, sadly, but we'll follow up around here. But unfortunately, we're coming right to an end, but I hope you've enjoyed this fantastic sunrise safari with us, and I hope you're going to join in again this afternoon. And it's been an absolute pleasure once again, and I hope you have a lovely day. So from myself and David, we shall see you this afternoon.